The car market has been going downhill for some time now, and I think everybody's pretty well aware of that by now. Those who have an auto loan today, up to 40% of people have negative equity, which means they owe more money than their vehicle is even worth. And on top of that, the quality of motor vehicles, it just keeps going down further and further as they keep getting more and more complex. Not only that, but the costs just keep getting higher and higher and higher. And the average number of parts that's on a vehicle today is about 30,000 parts per vehicle. And if you drive an electric vehicle or you have one, those average about 20,000 individual parts that make up that vehicle. And on top of that, more car parts these days are made with plastic. Even oil pans are being made from plastic, believe it or not. I couldn't believe that, but evidently that's true. Even freaking oil pans. So anyway, so speaking of the auto parts, less than 50% of new car parts for new vehicles are even made in the USA, which makes it almost impossible, if not completely impossible, for automakers to maintain quality control of their own vehicles that they are supposed to be manufacturing themselves. And that's causing a lot of problems in and of itself. That's probably what's driving up this insane number of recalls that we keep having to experience. And on top of all of that, we have the 25% tariffs that are still looming. I don't really know what that's going to look like, but it's not going to do anything good for the car prices. And of course, they say that the car prices will increase up to 25% or even more. And that's going to be talked about in this video, which I found on the channel Established Context. And it's a pretty good video. If you aren't very familiar with exactly what's going on in the car industry right now in the year 2025, he lays it out very accurately. It's a pretty good, pretty well put together video. It just recently came out just 6 days ago. So let's go ahead and just start it off.
Car market is beginning to collapse. After a short-lived sales spike earlier this spring, as buyers rush to beat Trump's new tariffs,
customers are in a panic. There's a frenzy going on. They want to buy cars before the tariffs hit and prices go up.
U.S. auto sales have plunged by nearly 10% in the month of May, the sharpest drop in over a year. But this isn't just a demand problem. The average new vehicle now costs around $50,000.
Yeah,
and even
people
a
can't afford that.
Used car goes for about $30,000. Loan delinquencies are rising, repossessions have ticked up, and
about $54,000 on average for a vehicle. Now, without even factoring in interest at all, let's say it's a 60-month loan. I mean, $54,000 for a vehicle over a 60-month period, $900 a month. That's what you're looking at. And that's not including interest. That's just flat $54,000. So needless to say, these prices are getting absolutely absurd. But as long as people keep buying these cars, they're just going to keep the prices high. People just got to quit buying cars. And I get it. Cars break down. You know, people want to be safe and they want to be in a reliable vehicle. And too many people believe that the day that your car ends up out of warranty, that you must trade it in as soon as humanly possible because it's going to break down any second, which is absolutely absurd. It's ridiculous. But anyway, I'll just keep going.
And now automakers are staring down a market that simply can't sustain these prices. But remember, all of this has really happened before Trump's new auto tariffs have gone into full effect.
Be honest with me.
That's going
to
be
start
bad.
Going up at some point. Is it in June? When do we see industry prices, not just for Toyota, but everybody, start to go up?
You're absolutely correct. 25% tariffs are unsustainable. Everybody's going to have, nobody has profit margins like that. So everyone will have to eventually.
So when do we see?
Right. Yeah. So like hold on. What are the profit margins? Just curious to see if it might be able to give me something, decent. No, not the stock. For vehicles sold. I don't even know if I'm even wording that accurately or not. Percentage. Let's see if this will come up with anything. No, it just keeps bringing up the freaking stock price. All right, hold on. Toyota net profit margin as of December 31st, 2024 is 9.89%. And I'm using Toyota not only because it's the COO in the video, but also Toyota, it's one of the best-selling cars out there. It's still widely regarded as one of the most, if not the most reliable motor vehicle brand out there on the market. They have been for decades. And yeah, 9.89%. Yeah, that would be unsustainable if the 25% tariffs were to kick in. And I mean, that's the real conundrum that these automakers find themselves in. They're charging over $50,000 for new cars because they've crammed way too much technology into these cars, and they're becoming impossibly expensive. And once these tariffs take effect, they're really going to get hit with a financial atomic bomb. I don't really know how else to put that. And combined with all the negative equity people have, combined with well over $1 trillion worth of auto loans that are sitting out there right now already, I think repossessions are at an all-time high. The average amount of months that repossession companies are backlogged, I've read 6 months, I've read 7 months, meaning that if your car is slated for repossession, it could take them up to 7 months to repossess your car because they have such a huge backlog of vehicles because people just can't afford what they're driving today. It's absolutely crazy. And this is all before these tariffs take effect. So if they have to increase the prices of these cars by another 25%, I mean, $54,000. Actually, you know what? I'll just do $50,000. I mean, that's going to be, so that's about $62,500. That's how much the average new car will have to cost. If the average new car today is 50 grand, they're going to have to bump it up to 62.5, and that's on average. And yeah, I mean, not so sure what people are going to do other than just keep driving the car that they have today for as long as humanly possible. Don't just have the mentality that you're going to drive the car until the wheels fall off. Don't just keep driving it after the check engine light goes on and just drive it until it won't move another mile. No, actually maintain it by the book. In your glove box, you have the owner's manual. There's a section in there called maintenance. Go through it and take a look at everything that needs to be routinely maintained with your car. If you stick by the book and change everything, do as much as you can yourself. Get on YouTube, DIY videos. It's not as difficult as it might sound or as you think it might be. If you drive a 2025, maybe those are a bit too complicated. I don't know. I'm speaking on vehicles manufactured in like the 2010s and before. They're really not that bad to change a lot of parts on them yourself. And all you need is like a basic mechanics set. Go to Harbor Freight, spend like $50, $60 on a basic mechanics tool set, and that alone you should be pretty good to go as far as changing some of the routine parts that you have to change out on your car, like spark plugs and things like that. I mean, it's really not that complicated to do that. But there are a lot of things in your car that you have to change on a routine basis. And if you do that, your car will last for years and years and years, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, like legit. They actually will. They're built to last for a very long time, possibly except for the vehicles that are made 2020 and newer. Those are they're made to be disposable vehicles, in my opinion. I don't even really have a whole lot to say about those because I'm more knowledgeable with vehicles manufactured prior to 2020. But anyway, I'm not going to hold it up. Let's keep going.
Well, you've already seen some of them go up. You've already seen.
But widespread, would you say June?
Absolutely. I think when you get to June or the end of June at least, you're going to see people they're going to feel the pressure and they're going to have to do it.
When you couple those
they're
with
not
the new
selling
steel
that
and
many
aluminum
today
tariffs,
already,
which have recently doubled,
we're going to bring it from 25% to 50%, the tariffs on steel into the United States of America.
Well, this whole thing begins to look a lot worse, not just for consumers, but also for these auto companies. So let's talk about why this is happening and what the collapse could look like next. Even as headlines focus on sticker prices, it's also the financing side of the car market that shows just how stretched consumers have become. Buyers are now taking on longer, riskier loans just to make monthly payments manageable. Nearly 1 in 5 new car buyers are signing 84-month loans.
What?
Themselves into
84-month loans. What? And of course, the reason that they're signing longer term loans is because it brings down the monthly payment. Too many people go into a dealership to buy a car and they're not as concerned about the total price of the car. You have to use the term out the door price. That factors in anything and everything, whatever your warranty is going to cost. If you get some extra fancy warranty attached to it, the true coat paint or whatever the hell that they add on to your total price, including the tax, including the title, the fees, the like I said, the warranty and the interest rate. When you bundle all of that up, They can tell you what the out-the-door price of the vehicle is after everything, but nobody asks them. Instead, people ask, what is my monthly payment? That's all I care about. As long as it's below $500 a month, I don't care how much it is. And that's a major problem. I mean, it's financial ignorance to not know how much that you're going to be paying for a car that you're in the dealership ready to buy. And they're stretching these loans out to 84 months. 1 in 5, man, that is insane. 20% of people are now committed to 84-month loans. And that just boggles my mind, man. 7 years. I mean, yes, your vehicle will last for 7 years. It almost certainly will. Your warranty probably won't last that long, but maybe it will. Just depends on how much you drive it. But yeah, it's just getting worse, man. They're
and the
96-month
loan
loans
term has now climbed to 68 months for new cars, with used cars being at 67.2 months, according to LendingTree. But these longer terms only mask the growing problem of unaffordability. Interest rates have risen sharply, with the average APR.
Yeah, which, by the way, if you're not too familiar with auto loans and everything, the longer your loan term is, the more money you're ultimately going to pay for that car. Because if you get a 60-month loan or an 84-month or a 96-month loan, your interest rate isn't going to change much, if any at all. And the longer you stretch out those car payments, the more money you're ultimately going to be paying to the bank in interest. The shorter your loan term is, the less interest money you're going to end up paying them. You're going to pay into the principal much faster. And, long story short, your monthly payments might be higher, but the total cost of the car is going to be a hell of a lot less if you get a shorter loan term than if you get a longer loan term. That's basically how it works.
Around 7% for new vehicles and almost 12% for used vehicles, making even basic financing expensive. For subprime borrowers, the situation is obviously much worse. Used car loan rates now range from 19 to 21.5%.
Yeah, look at this.
New car loans hit.
That is nuts, dude. Deep subprime, 3 to 500 credit score. Frankly, man, if your credit score is below 500, I mean, you really have no business trying to finance anything at all, let alone a freaking car, which is the second highest priced item that your average American will ever spend money on, aside from a house. That's the second biggest purchase that you make is a vehicle. And if your credit score is that low, you should be just putting like $100 aside here, $100 there, and just try to get the dirt cheap, oldest, running, cheapest vehicle you can possibly find, otherwise known as a cash car. But yeah, people they still do this, and they're getting nailed with a 22% interest rate. You can go over onto TikTok and listen to people who have auto loans right now who have bad credit. They're getting much higher interest rates than that. They're getting stuck with 28%. I've seen 30%. 30%. That would be no different than just swiping a credit card for your vehicle. It's essentially the same thing. I mean, 30% is insane. 21%. Hell, even 13% is kind of crazy in my opinion. But a lot of people are stuck with that.
15 to 20%.
Because they just can't help it themselves but sign. They just got to get a new car.
Tack on thousands in financing costs, inflating the total outlay far beyond the vehicle's base price. As a result, loan performance is deteriorating across the board. 30-day auto delinquencies are approaching 4%. Subprime borrowers are struggling the most, with 60-day delinquency rates reaching over 6% in December of 2024, which was a record high. Good. While broader 60-day delinquencies now exceed 1.5%. These are levels not seen since the financial crisis in 2008. And meanwhile, while all of that is going on, total auto loan debt has exploded to $1.65 trillion, which now exceeds student loan debt and accounts for over 9% of all U.S. consumer debt.
And again, this is before these tariffs are going to take effect, 25%. And we already looked at the numbers for Toyota. They're only earning about 10% profit on each vehicle that they're selling. So they can't handle keeping their vehicles the same price while the tariffs go up 25%. They can't do it. So they're going to have to raise these prices, I would argue, probably by about 25%. That way their shareholders are still getting relatively the same amount of profit that they were getting before the tariffs, except they won't be, because not as many people are going to buy vehicles if they increase the average cost for a vehicle up to $62,000, $63,000 on average. I just don't see it. I mean, people I think more people are probably just going to try to resort to other modes of transportation because, look, if the vehicle prices go up, guess what else is going up? Insurance. Insurance goes up when vehicle costs go up. if you buy a car that's $20,000 and you drive it for a while, your insurance is X. And then, or if you go and you buy a car for $60,000, your insurance is going to be Y, or whatever it's going to be, whatever the variable is. It's going to be much higher for a more expensive car, because if you wreck it, it's going to cost a lot more money to fix it. I mean, that's just basic common sense. And if the average goes up by 25%, everybody's insurance is probably going to go up more or less by 25%, especially if you drive a new car or a newer used car. So people are just going to look for other ways to get around, whether if it's Uber or public transportation, or even getting electric scooters, or even those electric bicycles. Those things are hot right now. I see those all over the place around my neighborhood, mainly with kids, teenagers, and whatnot. They ride those electric bikes, which some of those things can get up to like 30, 40 miles an hour. And some of them even have a range of like 50 miles. So you might even see a lot of people trying to transition into something like that, which it's a huge pain, doesn't protect you from the weather. But I mean, desperate times call for desperate measures. So I don't really know what people are going to do. And unless you just stick to the car you have, pay it off, please pay it off, and just drive it for as long as humanly possible and maintain the hell out of it.
In the last quarter of 2024, Americans originated $175 billion in new auto loans. This was a massive jump from $125 billion just a decade ago.
Yikes.
And the average monthly payment for a vehicle is insane, with it now being
That's wild.
$742
$742 a month.
And $525 a month for
used.
used car, pushing many households to their breaking point.
That is nuts.
Now in early 2025...
By the way, that does not include interest. Or not interest, my bad. That doesn't include insurance. Insurance on average, it's what, $250, maybe $300 a month on average for new cars for car insurance, and that's going up. Like I said, when the tariffs go up, insurance is going up right along with it. So, I mean, people are barely getting by as it is, especially with grocery prices, inflation. I don't even have to get into all that because we're all very well aware of that. Thank you, COVID. Thanks for that. Thank you, government, for locking things down, jacking up the price for everything. The whole supply chain shortage and the stimulus checks and all that bullshit that they just fanned out across the entire population. And now we're stuck with this crazy inflation. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss for words as to what people are going to do in the future.
25% tariff on imported vehicles went into effect on April 3rd.
Consider yourself lucky if you don't have a car payment today.
25% steel and aluminum tariff. Now, these policies triggered a short-term surge in car sales as consumers scrambled to buy before the expected price hikes. In March, auto sales soared to the highest level in 4 years, with GM reporting a 17% year-over-year increase. As a result, dealer inventory tightened fast, dropping more than 10%, and average days supply fell from 91 to around 70 days. But by May, the demand
seemed, which, by the way, historically a 70-day supply on dealership lots, historically, that's not a very good number either. I mean, it's better than what it was, but 70, I mean, even 90 days before that brief bump, because the dealerships, they were marketing the hell out of that. I mean, dealerships will tell the public anything they can possibly tell them to get them in there to buy a car. So as soon as Trump mentioned the tariffs, they leaned really heavily into that, saying you better get in here and buy a car before these tariffs come up, because then you're really not going to be able to afford it by then. And I mean, 90 days for the average vehicle to sit on a lot, that's a long time. And a lot of dealerships, they have what's called a floor plan, which means that they basically swipe a credit card to purchase their inventory. If they buy 50 cars a month or 100 cars a month, they're not actually spending their own money to buy all of those vehicles. Instead, they're using a lender or a bank or an institution to front them that money so they can get that inventory, put it on the lot. And for most dealerships, if they get those cars sold within 2 months or 60 days, they don't have to pay any interest on that money that they borrowed against this lender to put that car on the lot. But if the average day supply goes over 60 days, then the dealership does have to start paying interest on those cars that sit there. So in other words, if there's a 90-day supply, on average, across dealership lots across America, dealers are losing a lot of money. They're losing a hell of a lot of money. For every car that sits there, they have to pay a certain percentage to the lender. And there's a lot of vehicles that are sitting there for well over a year, 2 years in some cases. I mean, there's still a few vehicles, especially Ram. I think Ram pickup trucks, there's still a handful of 2023s that are still sitting on lots because they're too damn expensive and people just don't want them.
Vanish. Monthly sales fell nearly 10%, dropping to a 15.6 million annualized pace, the sharpest decline in over a year, and one of the largest monthly drops since the early pandemic shutdowns. Now, importantly, the import side of the market also fell off a cliff, as vehicle imports via sea plunged by 72.3% year over year.
Yikes, man.
With just
I
3,600
didn't know it was that
vehicles
high.
arriving at U.S. ports that
Whoa,
down
for
from
real?
over 13,000 the year prior. But this isn't just
Oh man, that's gonna bring down a supply shortage. And you know what? That might actually be strategic on the automakers' part, because they've been overflowing dealership lots for quite a while. Yeah, we had March and April, which there was a surge because of Trump's tariffs, but let's be real. March and April, that's always the hot time of year to buy a car because it's tax return time. Everybody gets their tax returns. Now they've got, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 that they could put down on a car. So a lot of people, they buy a car during tax time because they got a down payment that they got from the federal government thanks to their tax returns. And that also drove the drop in supply on dealership lots across America this year. But yeah, definitely the tariffs played a part in that too. But I mean, once the supply dwindles enough, I mean, yes, that I guess would bump up demand, and people may just end up biting the bullet, and they might end up paying $65,000 on average for a car. I mean, would you pay that much for the average new car? I know I sure as hell wouldn't. That's
insane. About
insane.
finished cars, because the 50% steel and aluminum tariffs could increase the cost of a new vehicle anywhere between $400 on the low end to $3,000 on the higher end, squeezing manufacturers and consumers even further. Ford suspended its 2025 earnings guidance in May. They also warned
Japan
of a
just bought
$1.5
US
billion
Steel.
hit to pre-tax
Nippon,
earnings
I think
due to
that's her
these
name.
new tariffs. GM went so far to withdraw its full-year guidance and paused its stock
Not sure if that
buyback
helps
program,
anything.
citing the uncertain cost environment. In short, the tariffs sparked a brief panic buying surge, followed by a steep drop in demand, disrupting imports, rising production costs, and growing pressure on automakers to try to protect margins in this softening market. And despite the nationalist rhetoric behind these policies, even the so-called American-made cars aren't immune. One of the most common talking points in support of these tariffs is this idea that Americans can simply avoid these price hikes by just buying American. But that idea is a fairy tale. I mean, literally. Because even the most American car brands aren't truly American-made.
Yeah, it's like 50% or so. Matter of fact, I wanted to look that up before I started this video, and I honestly forgot. But I want to see if the car parts are subjected to these tariffs. Individual car parts. %, tariffs. Yeah, I didn't spell it right, but they'll figure it out. Let's see. Yes, they are subject to the 25% tariff in the United States, effective no later than May 3rd, 2025. All right. Well, he is absolutely correct then in that case. So with car parts being subjected to that tariff, the 25%, then yeah. I mean, if Ford is assembling their vehicles inside the United States, or just name your car brand, if they're assembling your vehicle inside the United States, they are not immune to the tariffs, because every part that they're importing is subject to that 25% tariff. So, in less than 50% of new cars, or less than 50% of the car parts that are being manufactured are actually made in the U.S. So the majority of the car is imported from outside the U.S., even if they're assembled inside the country.
Ford F-150, often held up as one of the most patriotic vehicles on the road. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, only 32% of its components are U.S. or Canadian made. That means 70% of the truck, from electronics to transmission parts, is sourced internationally.
Yeah,
and it's not alone. It's just
good.
one of many vehicles that falls into a similar category. But even if we take Tesla, which is a company that proudly touts
I don't
its
think they
US
make the
factories,
batteries here.
they still can't avoid the global supply chains.
No,
the
rare
Model
earth
Y
minerals.
was actually ranked the most American-made car in 2023 by Cars.com.
I believe it is, though.
Yet it still contains around 30% foreign parts. But no matter the model, all of these Teslas...
Yeah, dude, you are right about that. 30% of Teslas, or 30% of the parts that are put into Teslas, are manufactured outside the U.S. That's still a hell of a lot less than the likes of Ford and other vehicles or other automakers that are out there. So, I mean, they do have an edge on that at least.
Most EVs still rely heavily on battery cells and key materials that come from China and South Korea. In fact,
a good chunk of the Tesla cost is in the battery.
The components,
it's like 15 or 20 grand.
Lithium-ion batteries are deeply embedded in foreign supply chains. The truth is, no mass market vehicle sold in the US is 100% American made.
However, I did read with regard to mining, I believe they discovered a huge lithium-ion deposit somewhere inside the U.S., and I think that Trump actually mentioned that. It's already mining Nevada, the only active lithium mine in the country, 5,000 metric tons annually. That doesn't sound very much at all. Let's see. Challenges and timeline. Hold on here. Oregon-Nevada border, a massive deposit potentially holding 20 to 40 million metric tons of lithium valued at $1.5 trillion is currently under exploration. Commercial production could take a decade or more due to environmental and regulatory hurdles. Well, I mean, that's all wrapped up in the EPA. And I mean, the Trump administration, they could cut red tape when it comes to the EPA. At least I'm assuming that they can. I mean, I don't know, to be honest. But yeah, so I guess it does have to do with the timeline. Plus, you have to build the manufacturing facilities. And not only that, but you have to build the mining infrastructure around this location that they're looking into. But I mean, yeah, it is a good and bad news kind of situation. The good news is they found a deposit that has a shitload of lithium ion, which means that we feasibly could be producing our own lithium ion batteries in a relatively short amount of time. The bad news is that short amount of time could be like any time between, like, I don't know, 3-4 years, all the way up to like 10 years, maybe even longer. So until then, we're kind of dependent on China, but I don't really think EVs are the solution anyway, because we don't have the power grid to handle electric vehicles across America. If you got rid of every gas vehicle and replaced it with an electric vehicle tomorrow, we would need the electricity equivalent of 1,200 nuclear power plants. And right now, the United States only has 54 nuclear power plants in operation. And that's the average size nuclear power plant. We need well over 1,000 in order to handle that insane amount of need for the electricity to power EVs for everyone. Because there's almost 300 million motor vehicles on the road today, including EVs, just vehicles in general. So EVs aren't really the answer because we just don't have the infrastructure to handle that. Now, I know it's slowly growing, it's slowly getting better, and that's the only way that can be possible, is if we very slowly, organically edge our way into it year after year. But that could take 20, 30, 40 years. And again, we have to build the power plants in order to produce the electricity to run these damn things. So
according to the NHTSA's own data, the average U.S.
Plus, most people don't like EVs.
About 50% foreign parts.
Over half of first-time EV buyers said that they don't want an EV for their second car.
It can be very difficult to get the true origin of every single component that goes into a vehicle, because a certain car part could be made up of several other components that are sourced
about
from
30,000 parts per gas vehicle on average.
Somewhere else, it could say it was made from that country, technically speaking. The takeaway here is the vast majority of parts that don't come from the US.
The bolts might be made over here, the nuts
tariffs,
might be made over there.
At least for now.
In this specific dealership, about 30% of the inventory is assembled in the U.S., but parts come from all over the world, so all of them are going to be affected by the tariffs. This is a $77,000.
Well, it sounds like we need to start making parts in America again.
So a 25% increase on this is approximately
Why don't we start doing that?
And when tariffs hit imports, whether it's the finished cars or these other components that go inside them, it doesn't just affect every new vehicle on the lot. It ripples into manufacturing, auto repair, used cars, marketing, on and on and on. And lastly, tariffs don't just raise the price of foreign brands. They raise the cost of everything, even the vehicles that appear to be mostly domestic. But this collapse right now isn't just about cars. I mean, the unraveling of the car market isn't an isolated event. It's a canary in the coal mine for the broader US economy. Consumers are struggling. The University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index remained at some of its lowest levels since 1952, highlighting persistent financial unease despite temporary trade truce headlines. Meanwhile, as I mentioned earlier, with auto loan delinquencies rising, this doesn't feel like it's just a personal hardship. it sounds more like a systemic risk. With 1.65 trillion in outstanding car loans, rising defaults don't only hurt borrowers, they threaten financial institutions
the whole
across
financial
the spectrum.
market.
Banks, credit
Lending,
unions, auto lenders, and investors in asset-backed securities. Now, if these losses continue to mount, lenders might tighten credit, making financing harder, not just for cars, but for everything from home appliances to small businesses.
And I mean, I was saying this back during the COVID era when they were dropping interest rates down to damn near zero. They should have went the opposite direction. They should have jacked up back in like 2022. They should have jacked up interest rates up to like 15% because people kept spending money they didn't have. It was crazy. Home equity loans and borrowing against 401ks. And now we're in a situation where people are tapped out on the credit cards, or tapped out on everything. And I don't know what you do from there, because they're still going to be stuck in an economy that's been inflated, and things don't seem to be coming down. Everything just seems to keep getting ratcheted up higher and higher in costs.
Gone are the days when you're going to see widespread 0%
but will it all come crashing down? I don't know.
Big discounts on vehicles. The automakers are being more judicious about production, and because they've got to sit there and say, how do we adjust to the cost that we're paying? We don't want to say we're passing it along to the consumer. So
they can't.
We do have to pass it along in some fashion. You're just not going to see the deals that you once saw.
On the manufacturing front, this stress is already hitting home. The auto industry supports roughly 10 million jobs across factories, suppliers, and dealerships in the U.S.
That's a problem.
And in auto-dependent states like Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, Alabama, and Tennessee,
big problem.
Plant slowdowns and job cuts ripple through local economies.
Gabriel Ehrlich, director of the University of Michigan's Economic Forecasting Group, says tariffs will likely lead to a decline in auto industry employment in the next 5 years.
We're estimating a decline of about 1.8% in domestic auto production. And if that passed through proportionally to employment in Michigan's auto sector, it would come to about 3,300 job losses.
But Ehrlich says each lost auto job brings with it around 3 jobs in other sectors, bringing the total losses to 13,300.
Oh, good
The analyst
grief,
estimated domestic manufacturers to produce 190,000 fewer vehicles per year due to a combination of economic factors.
Automakers...
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, though, but isn't that supposed to be what these tariffs are all about? It's not just getting what's owed to us back to America, because other companies, like they've been charging us tariffs all along, but we've been charging almost no tariffs on them. And it's not only that, but it's trying to incentivize these companies to return to America and start building more stuff in America, including car parts. I mean, Ford should start exploring ways to manufacture more of their individual parts in America, because every part that they're able to source in America, they're not going to have to pay a 25% tariff on that. Now, I know 30,000 parts, that's a hell of a lot of parts to get. Well, no, like, let's say that it's half. Say it's 15,000 parts that they're sourcing from outside of America. That's still 15,000 different parts that you're going to have to figure out how to manufacture inside America. So yeah, that's a big problem. But some of those individual parts are expensive. It could be, the components that I don't know, the alternator, for example. That's a bad example, but there are some parts in the car that they could just start manufacturing in America, and just that one part could save them like $200 per vehicle, for instance. I mean, that should be, at least that's how I understood the tariffs, to be handed out. Like, that's the reason for them, is to try to get manufacturing to return back to America. Will it actually happen? I mean, probably not in the short term. I mean, you can't just build a factory overnight and expect to just start cranking parts out. It's kind of a long-term game, and a lot of it's also going to depend on the next administration, because 2028 is going to come around. And I mean, are they going to continue what Trump put in place as far as the tariffs, or are they just going to eliminate all of them and build a whole propaganda campaign around these tariffs and how it's destructive to America, and then they're going to throw out all of that, and now we're right back to where we started? I mean, I don't know, man. There's a lot of political uncertainty, and it's frankly, it's been really frustrating over the last 10 years, to be honest.
Such as Ford and GM are pulling back on EV investment, citing softening demand and rising costs.
Yeah, people don't want EVs.
While the EV hype might be fading for some other reasons, tariffs make this whole situation worse. While often touted as a tool to revive domestic manufacturing, the last round of steel tariffs in Trump's first term ended up reportedly costing 75,000 manufacturing jobs just to create 1,000 jobs in the steel industry. So while tariffs on cars and other components will raise costs across the board
It's a long-term
without
play, dude.
guaranteeing job gains, a lot of the impacts from these tariffs haven't even been fully accounted for in the economy yet. So where is all of this going? Well, I think the collapse of
see.
the car market is a warning signal. Because when Americans become too stretched to buy, whether that's a new or used
We already
vehicle,
are.
lending tightens, factories slow, and entire regions risk spiraling downward. The system as a whole is showing itself to be incredibly fragile, and what's happening in the auto industry might just be the first domino. But if I'm wrong, and this is just what a strong economy looks like, well, try to imagine what happens when it actually weakens. Now, if you enjoyed
Yeah,
this
it's called a
video and you want
recession.
to learn more about why 60% of Americans can't afford a minimum quality of life, well, I covered it in
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure that's also a good video, but I mean, at the end of the day, people are accountable for their own actions, and people are very financially irresponsible. People are they're paying 30%, 40, 50% of their gross monthly income on a car payment. That's insane. Too many people, especially people in their 20s and in their 30s, they've got to have that new Audi, or they got to have that new Mercedes or a Beamer or whatever, and they cannot afford it, but they don't care. They want it. They only live once. To hell with my elder years. I don't care about saving for that. I'm going to live for it today. I don't even know if I'll be alive then. I mean, it's backwards, ridiculous mentality. And look, I mean, if things get real bad in the car market, and if that ripples out across the entire financial sector for everything that has to do with lending, I mean, in my opinion, it's just going to have to happen, because people can't just keep borrowing more and more and more. I mean, the average person is already tens of thousands of dollars in debt as it is, and it's only going to keep getting worse. And we have to get out of this in debt society that we've built up around ourselves, and we really got to start getting away from the financial enslavement to the banks and the institutions that we're stuck with. And I mean, I don't know, man. It's been this way my entire life, I'm sure, probably decades before I was even born. That we've been in this consumer lender culture, and it's getting exponentially worse, really, especially after COVID happened. But at the end of the day, I think just people are just going to have to keep their cars. I mean, whatever car you have right now, just baby the hell out of it. Take as good a care of it as you possibly can. Or if you have to get rid of your car and end up with something cheaper just for the sake of better insurance, or maybe better gas mileage or something or anything, I mean, so be it. But even that's going to have its own set of problems. If everybody if everybody looks for a car that's like $5,000 or $10,000, that demand is going to keep going up. I'm sure it has been going up for years at this point, because the average car is about $50,000 new. And a lot of people who have the financial common sense to know what they can and cannot afford, they're opting to just save the $742 a month that they would be spending on a new car. And they're just opting to look on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or cars.com or wherever they can look to find a car that's only going to cost them like $7,000, $8,000, $9,000. And they'll just buy that car. They'll get minimum liability insurance, because that's still relatively cheap, at least compared to collision insurance. And they'll just keep that car maintained as best they can, and they'll just keep driving that until the wheels fall off. But I don't know. That's just the best advice that I have. I mean, actually, I forgot to actually put this up here. So I'll show you a few pictures of my car. Now, I drive a 1999. It's a Mitsubishi Mirage. And yeah, it's slow. It's only about 92 horsepower. That's under the hood. And I've got about 242,000 miles on it. And the exhaust manifold is actually almost brand new. It doesn't look like it, but I just put in a new exhaust manifold about a year ago. And I've got all this like wiring insulation on it, because the wires aren't exposed, but that corrugated wire protectant, that plastic crap that they put around wires, it's brittle. It's kind of crumbling. So I figured I would insulate it with better stuff just to help preserve it for longer. I mean, at least I hope it will, but whatever. But anyway, but yeah, plenty of room to work under this hood. It's so nice, man. 90s cars, they make them so easy to work on. And so that's in my oil cap, just to kind of show you what inside my engine looks like. It's nice and clean. all you got to do is keep that oil changed, man, every 3,000, 5,000 miles, whatever your manufacturer recommends. Since my car is high mileage, almost 250,000 miles, I'm changing it roughly every probably 4, maybe between 4 and 6 months, because I do short distance driving. I live in St. Pete and I don't long distance drive. So I start my car driving a mile or two and then I turn it off. So so my oil, it'll start smelling a little gassy after a while. But yeah, anyway, that's under my oil cap. I think it looks pretty nice for the amount of mileage. There it is, 241,869 miles. That's how many miles I got on my car right now. Paid $1,100 for it cash in 2015. And that's inside. I gutted it all out, ripped out the ceiling upholstery, ripped out the door panels, and I even ripped out the carpet, put floor mats in, and stick shift. Then I put like this like cargo net on there, mounted that on there because I ripped out the back seats, and I got a speaker subwoofer back there. I've got a couple tool bags. So in the event that, God forbid, the worst case scenario were to happen, I don't want that shit flying up into the front. So I put the cargo net there. Plus, I don't know, I think it looks kind of cool, but whatever. And yeah, another side view of my door, ripped out. It's all metal all over the place. Metal. And yeah, it's cozy. It's comfortable. I got the fire extinguisher there, not just for aesthetics, but it's there for a reason because I've got wiring all over the place. I have, oh man, I lost count. I think I've got 12 different LED systems throughout the car, under the car, around the car, on the outside, under the wheel wells. I got rock lights. I got lights underneath the dash. The lights all over the place. So there's a lot of wiring everywhere. Actually, yeah, you can actually kind of see some of it up under here. I mean, it's just a jumbled mess, but there's a method to the madness. But yeah, there's my switch panel there for all the LEDs and whatnot. But yeah, that's the point of the fire extinguisher because, yeah, you never know. I'm not perfect, but yeah, let me see if I got anything else. Oh yeah, here's my stick shift knob in Japanese because my car was 100% made in Japan. It was imported from Japan in June of 1998. So I thought that was a good addition, just adding like a little shifter knob, little Japanese. I don't know what the hell it says, but I'm assuming that that's a 1, that's a 2, that's a 3, that's a 4, that's a 5, and that's reverse. At least that's what it's supposed to be. But anyway, yeah, that's my car. That's, from an interior perspective. But yeah, again, $1,100, probably the best purchase I ever made because I've been driving it for 10 years and it's my daily driver. It's my one and only vehicle that I have. So I rely on it day by day. So I make sure that everything's on the up and up. The coolant looks nice and clean. The brake fluid's nice and clean. Clutch fluid's looking good. Even the power steering fluid is clean. I mean, I make sure everything, spark plugs, they were changed, I think about probably 5,000 miles ago, roughly. I just put in new fuel injectors about a year ago. That only took like 45 minutes. So easy to work on. And I am not a mechanic. I didn't go to school for it. Everything that I've done to it was just straight from DIY YouTube. I try to find, or whatever goes wrong with it or whatever I want to change on it, I just plug it into YouTube, how to replace ... on a 1999 Mitsubishi Mirage. And more often than not, there's a video out there for it. So if my car still has do-it-yourself videos on YouTube, being a car from the 90s, I would almost make a Vegas bet that your car has pretty much the same thing. If you want to try to tackle changing your brakes or changing your struts or even something more simple like your spark plugs or hell, even your air filter. Don't have somebody change your air filter. That takes like 15 seconds to do it yourself. Save the 25, save the $30 or however much those oil change places are charging for that these days. Change your own, your headlights if a headlight goes out or whatever the hell. Now, again, I can't speak on 2025s or 2024s. Those things are, compared to my car, they're infinitely complex as far as I'm concerned. So I'm not really sure how complicated it is to change the spark plugs in a car that was just made last year. But I can only imagine the amount of nightmares that you're going to have to endure just to get at them and then get them changed out. But hopefully most cars aren't that bad. Hopefully, at least for the more basic maintenance that the individual should be able to do. But they're trying to manufacture cars to get to the point where you can't work on it yourself. It has to go not just to a mechanic, it has to go to the dealership because everything in these cars, they're getting more and more heavily software based. So if you do change something like the spark plugs, you have to reprogram that into your vehicle's system. And if you don't, then your car is going to assume something's wrong with the spark plugs, and then you're going to start seeing warning lights all over your dashboard, and maybe your car might even start performing more poorly. It might start running rich or running lean or whatever. I don't know. I just assume that there's a whole slew of problems that could develop if you just tackle it yourself and you don't reprogram your car to understand that you just changed something in it. And it's only becoming more and more of a headache. And I mean, the dealerships, they got to make their money somewhere. And a lot of these dealerships, actually the majority of dealerships in America, they're making more money in their service department than they are in their new vehicle department. And this is a lot of the reason. It's because they're engineering these things to the utmost extreme, and they're not really over-engineering them in the way they did back in the 90s, where those cars back then, they would just last forever. They're still on the road. A lot of them are still running perfectly fine, but they're over-engineering the cars today more on the software and the computer side of things, not so much on the longevity of the cars themselves. I mean, I don't know, man. Cars that are made in 2025, what is the average overall odometer going to read by the time they finally break down for the last time? I mean, will most cars that are on the road that were built this year or last year, are they really going to reach 200,000 miles? Will they even have the capability of getting there? And plus, do people even take care of their cars? And I don't think they do. I think the majority of people, the most that they'll do is change their oil, and that's about it. And frankly, I think for a lot of people, especially probably the younger people, I mean, that's probably even asking a lot out of them just to get their oil changed every 3,000 miles or 5,000 miles or what have you. But yeah, definitely look in your service or your owner's manual. It's different for all cars. Like my car's owner's manual, it says change my oil every 7,500 miles, which it's a high mileage car, so I change it a lot more often than that. But if it were under 100,000 miles, maybe I'd change it less often. But anyway, I'm just going to quit rambling. That's basically all I got. Thanks for watching. See you later.